before I forget. Okay, so we're gonna do a group quiz. It's gonna be pretty easy. So you could pair up with your homework classmate, or do you guys want to do like random pairs of two? How do you guys prefer to do this? Are people skipping class today? There's only like 4 of you guys. 4th of July weekend, huh?
Considering there's not that many, should we do a class group?
Well, we can do 2 and 2, otherwise you won't learn if it's like all 4. Yeah, it's open book, open internet. Okay, Puya's here. And then let's just get one more to get started. Puya, we're doing a group quiz today. So has anyone had a chance to go over the SAFE, convertible notes, KISS, dilution, anti-dilution, all that
Yes.
stuff? Oh, good. It'll be easy
It's
for
like
you
a
guys.
45-minute lecture.
That's great. Good. And then after that, we could discuss how that works in the real world. What time is it? 9:03. Okay. What's everyone doing 4th of July? Anyone doing anything fun?
Having a barbecue at my house, that's all.
Barbecue at your house?
Yeah, just meeting up with a few old friends. Not really doing much either.
Perfect. Give it like 45 more seconds. I guess we're almost halfway there after this, right? So classes 5 and 6 is this weekend, and then next week 7 and 8. There's 14 weeks, so we're almost halfway there, guys. Congratulations! What a milestone! The first summer in 2 years, and taking Business 636 or Fin 435. Okay, so I guess we'll do a 3-2 split, and then or 2-2-1. Should we do a 2-2-1? Okay, so we'll do a 3-2 split. The questions are actually, let me just share with you guys the questions. So the questions are actually posted already. So if you go to if you go to your modules, go to term sheet questions, and then term sheet questions 2. So you could term sheet questions 2 is like a bonus if you can't finish term sheet question 1. Don't work on term sheet question 2. So just focus on this. If you've already done some of the reading, then you could probably get to term sheet questions 2 pretty quickly. But if you're doing this for the first time, you might get stuck. So do both of those if it's easy for you. Oh, this is gonna be easy if like 3 people miss out. I only need to grade like 2 papers. Yeah, so let me just create the breakout rooms, and I'll just make this random. Assign automatically. Okay, great. So room 1, Lai, Persia, Vince. Room 2, Ahmad, Puya. Hey, Luke. Hey, Luke. Oh, Logan. Hey, guys. We have a pop quiz, a group one. So I'll lump you guys in the same group.
All right.
Let me just, how do I create another breakout room? Oh, shoot. Okay, so why don't you guys, do you guys have Zoom, right? Okay, why don't
Yes.
you guys leave this Zoom, because I can't create a new breakout room, and then work on it in your own separate Zooms together. Because it was we randomly assigned groups. It's not that hard.
All right.
It's an open book and all that stuff. So if you go to it's funny, you guys came in at the same time. Are you guys like roommates or something?
No.
Oh, just coincidental.
Yeah.
Oh,
Purely-
that's so funny. Like you guys came in exactly at the same time. I was like, how am I gonna split this? Okay, so go under. Yeah, you still have like 30 minutes. So go under module 3, week 3, term sheet questions, and then if you have time, this is the bonus term sheet questions too. And then you just submit under assignments.
Sounds
Yeah, so leave and just come back at 9:45.
All right.
Yeah,
See-
or exchange each other's info so you guys don't miss each other.
Luke, do you want me to send you I'll send you a email. I can find yours on the Chapman Outlook then.
Perfect.
All right. Sounds good. I'll see you
Yep.
there.
Thanks,
See you,
guys.
Professor.
Yep. Are you guys, did you guys finish?
We have one more question,
Not yet, actually.
Oh, do you guys want more time?
Yeah.
if
please.
possible, please.
Yeah, we just have one more question.
Okay. I'll give you guys till 10 then, 10 a.m. Is that cool? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
And
No
do we need
worries.
to submit it or?
Yeah, I'll extend it till 10. Yeah.
Is there a page on the assignments to turn it in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Should just one of us turn it in for all
Mhm.
three?
And just put your name. Okay, so I'll open it again. Or actually, let me just create the rooms here. Recreate it. And then I'll just let you guys just go into your own rooms. Because there's another group, but we didn't have a room, so they're working on it on a separate Zoom. Okay. Good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Let's go to breakout room number 2, Ahmed. Can we choose it? Yeah. Join number 2 in breakout rooms. Can you see it?
Yeah, Ahmad. Are you there? Are you guys not able to get in? Oh, you're on mute.
Could you join us in number 2, room number 2?
I
Yeah.
can, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
there you go.
Hey, professor.
Did you guys finish? We need to get class started, otherwise we're gonna be here till 2 p.m. Unless you guys really want that. Okay, good job. It's like professor's instincts. I was like, today is a good day for a pop quiz because I know some people aren't gonna show up. Like you get good at this craft. But we did have two fellows show up at like 15 minutes late. So I don't know where they are. They haven't. I told them to come back at 9:45, but they haven't. I guess they're still working on the quiz. But yeah, let's get started. Do we need a break? Or are you guys good? Okay, we'll just keep going. Okay, good. So we'll just keep it very, very high level. I hope you guys are, pretty much like experts at this point, understanding convertible notes, versus a KISS and a SAFE. So yeah, so can anyone tell me, like, what are the differences?
Well, a SAFE isn't debt. It stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity, whereas a KISS has like the maturity and the interest. So like it's more similar to convertible note, but it's just they're like agreements for investors giving you money now for issuing them stock later, basically.
But what about convertible note versus a SAFE? What's the difference between those two? Not SAFE versus a KISS. What are the core differences between convertible notes and a SAFE and or a KISS? So it's like, why did they even come out with a SAFE or a KISS versus a convertible note?
Well, a SAFE isn't debt.
That is
So-
correct.
That's why I feel like they probably came out with it, because they don't want to have that, like, the accrued interest and then like having to pay on a certain date.
Yeah. So Persia, let's say you're an investor, right? And you invested in, let's say, Facebook, or you're thinking that you're investing in the next Facebook, right? And Facebook you got in so freaking early, and you think it's gonna go up by at least 1000x in like 6 or 7 years. Does like 8% interest, is that a big deal to you or no? If you invested, let's say, $10,000 even in Facebook.
Like, is that a big deal? Like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, because then that's a lot more money that I'd be getting back, right?
But relative to your 1000x return, if you put down 10,000, your return would be 110 million, and then 100 million. Yeah. So with that 8%, you're going to make about 10 G's, and
Mhm.
then with the 1000x, you're going to make about 100 million. Are
Yeah,
you going to
so-
worry about missing out on 10 grand?
No.
Like, screw
Interest
Facebook.
is, yeah, no.
It's just water under the bridge, right? So that's why they came up with safes and kisses, because like after a certain point, a company like Facebook, you're either going to go bankrupt in like 18 months, or you're going to grow exponentially. So the dividend payouts, the interest, all that stuff became so irrelevant, and it became like investors and founders alike were like, why are we arguing over 6 or 7 or 8% debt when pretty much the make or break all happens right at the point of exit? So that's pretty much the genesis of why a SAFE or KISS came out. Now convertible notes are still prevalent, but since about 5 or 6 years ago, it became more and more common that people were using SAFEs or KISSes. So when I was actually fundraising, there was no such thing as a SAFE or a KISS. And then I became an advisor for a couple of startups, and they bring me this agreement, like, what the hell is this? Like, are you kidding? Like, what KISS? Like, what is going on here? I was so confused. So it's a pretty modern concept. They came about 6 or 7 years ago, and then it's very prevalent now. It's the standard. And having a convertible note is not as common. So I would say more people are either using SAFEs or KISSes opposed to convertible note. And I would say SAFE is a lot more common now than a KISS. Persia, you're right. It's like a loan, right? It's called convertible note for a reason. And that's how it's the vehicle investment structure is set up. So these are some other key highlights. Convertible note converts to a preferred stock. Does anyone remember the difference between a preferred stock versus a common stock? And what the core difference is? Which one has voting rights?
Common stock.
Common stock, right, Puya? Yeah. But in the VC world, it is not uncommon for preferred shareholders to have voting rights as well. They'll put in certain terms and language to include that in there until a certain time. Now, the beauty of a SAFE or a KISS, which I like, is that it converts into a priced amount at the time when a really large VC actually creates a valuation of the company and becomes a lead investor and then puts money in. So a lot of the negotiations is deferred. And that's very practical because a lot of capital oftentimes is wasted at the seed and friends and family stage, and it never really materializes to anything big. So the idea is to postpone a lot of these key terms until a big company at a larger seed round or a Series A kind of validates that concept and says, hey, here's $1 million. And we believe your company, for example, is valued at 5 million and we're putting $1 million down. Everyone will get that same price and that large investor will anchor it. So that's really important also for you to know as a founder to get a really reputable VC firm in the beginning, because normally the more reputable it is, the more people believe in that company and then they'll follow on in that round. So bear that in mind as you go. Okay, where are the other two guys? I'm still working on the quiz. This is not good. Okay. So these are just some other concepts. I'm sure you guys have went through this quite a bit. So SAFE, early stage vehicle for early stage startups, provides right to convert investment to equity in a future round. Major terms are decided later. Does not have an expiration or maturity date, right? So a note, just like a bond, has a certain maturity date, but SAFE does not. So within SAFEs and KISSes, I'm sure you guys saw there's like different structures within them. So you could always negotiate separate terms. Normally, when you go into a accelerator or incubator, a lot of these agreements are already standardized. So for example, if you were to apply to anything from, let's say, UC Berkeley's Startup Accelerator to Y Combinator, 500 Startups, Techstars, any one of these, normally each cohort will have a certain price that is pretty much like the benchmark. So I remember Y Combinator last year, everyone started at a $7 million valuation. It was just like, everyone's $7 million, all 30 of your companies. And if you want to go up or down to like 6 or 8, like you could do that. But the expectation was 7 million. When one of my startups got into Techstars about a year and a half ago, which was a co-accelerator with Barclays Investment Bank, it was a $3 million valuation. And then if I remember correctly, for 500 startups, oh no, I'm sorry, they pushed it to something like 7, and then YC was 10. And then 500 startups back in 2012 was a $3 million valuation. So everyone started at $3 million valuation, except for a couple of guys that were just really, really good at fundraising. And yeah, so there's sometimes something called a most favored nation clause. Are you guys familiar with the most favored nation clause in business development or sales? Lai? It seems like you're ready to say something. No? Oh.
Yes, sorry, the most nation clause refers to when investors receive better securities in the future when they're if and when they're issued by the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like basically what it sounds like, right? The idea is to protect against a down road or getting a worse deal than before. So it's saying like whatever round you do, I shouldn't get the worse terms than anyone else, right? So that's simply what it is. I haven't seen this a lot actually on term sheets, but I've seen this significantly more on business development deals, but I could see the same principles apply occasionally. Now, so sometimes I know in the readings it says something like 1 million in equity for KISS. So a lot of these terms are actually negotiable. Sometimes if you're doing really, really well, the terms, just remember like how we talked about last night, the 220 rule for like VCs and PE firms sometimes don't apply for people who outperform, right? Or companies that outperform. So if you're a really, really hot startup or really awesome entrepreneur or just great at sales, there's a lot of wiggle room that, you could create to create more favorable terms. Here's a quick summary. Does anyone remember what early exit payout is? Okay, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. It's a liquidation preference. So in the case of a liquidity event, like such as selling a company, VCs will get a little bit more money, basically, like special terms. So we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but yeah, so let's so that's pretty much it. So you could see, really nice summary here. It's good to know because a lot of these term sheet stuff, whether you're going into private equity or VC, sometimes some of the stuff apply when you're getting a job pertaining to stock options. It's really good to know because you're gonna have to know, right? Anytime you get investors, even if you're not going into VC or PE and just raising money from friends and family, these are really good terms to know. And a lot of them are very very consistent all across. Okay, so why safes? Well, holders of safe were early investors coming to to a price round. Safe is not debt, right? Debt didn't make sense for founders to invest to pay legal fees when the future of the startup was uncertain. It's much more quicker. Dividends can be accumulative or non-accumulative. So are you guys familiar with dividends? Right? You guys are all familiar with dividends? Okay. So this is just kind of like a tomato stuff thing, right? So dividends could be compounded or non-compounded. So let's say there's supposed to be a 5% dividend compounded on, let's say, any kind of note, right? It could be a convertible note. It could be a safe. For my terms in private equity, my investors do get dividends, for example, and it's accumulative. And what happens is that if it's like a 5% dividend, for example, it could either be calculated as just 5% per year or 5% compounded. And that could either convert into extra additional shares or it could be distributed via stock. So normally, this is the dividend amount is calculated based off of an opportunity cost. Can anyone want to take a guess what that percentage is? The normalized opportunity cost?
20%.
Why is it 20%?
That's a good question. I was just throwing a number out there. If I'm being real.
What's the average stock market return?
6.5.
Oh, 6.5. Okay. You guys said 6.5.
They use different average. So, yeah. So
Depends on when you started to invest.
Yeah, depends on yeah.
If you put your money at the bottom of 2020, it'd probably be like 80%. But the average is around 8 to 10%. So a lot of these interest rates and dividend payouts, even like sellers notes, right? In a private equity deal, when you're supposed to pay back the original seller over a course of time, will center around that stock market return, 8 to 10%. Because the default argument is always going to be like, well, instead of investing you, I could just put it in the stock market and I have a lot more liquidity. I need a premium off of that. Or, for example, that's the opportunity cost. So because of that, it's always, that argument is always centered around that. So you're going to see dividend or certain, let's say like interest rates somewhere around there, or because debt is a little bit more guaranteed, maybe it'll be like 5% from that. But that would be a starting point of negotiation. It's just a common thing in finance, and it'll be a recurring theme throughout this course. So here's a little bit more on dividends, right? For early stage investments, dividends generally do not provide venture returns. They're simply modest compared to the potential 10x return. Very simple, similar to the interest rate. Opposed to PE and venture deal success is not a 10% return rather than a 10x return. So when we talked about, for example, PE and versus VC, just remember, right, when it comes to VC deals, you're trying to hit home runs, and then PE, you're trying to hit singles and doubles. So when you're actually negotiating in a private equity deal, so let's say you guys don't even care about private equity, right? And then you start a lifestyle business, Puya, for example, right? And he created some kind of like digital agency firm, like marketing firm, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And then 5 years later, it grows to something like $10 million, right? He did like a phenomenal job. There's no tech, it's just training companies how to do digital marketing, right? Maybe EBITDA of like $2 million. Yeah, something like that, Puya can probably sell for like anywhere from like $10 to $20 million, right? Depending on the growth rate, various factors, etc. So when you're actually, looking at the growth rate of that kind of company, it's not going to grow at the speed of, let's say, Facebook, right? So in that scenario, that dividend amount is going to matter a lot during negotiations. So in PE firms, the dividend, the interest rate is discussed, opposed to the VC world. So there's no such thing as a safe for a kiss in private equity, basically. There's no such thing as like, oh, we'll negotiate the price later. That's like ridiculous. That's not going to happen for that reason. Does that make sense to you guys? So depending on the growth of the company, the structure of the cap table, the market, what's highlighted in a term sheet is very, very different. As I mentioned earlier, dividends either get paid in stock or gets rolled into cash, which is going to be a very, very marginal amount. But you as an entrepreneur, this kind of matters in a weird way, but somewhat negligible way, because it eats into your cap table a little bit. So in that case, you're actually incentivized, for example, in a private equity deal, to grow as quickly as possible. So then less dividend amount is accrued over time. Does that make sense? So you want to outpace, right, the dividend or interest rate or whatever it is. So when it accrues into that cap table, you're diluted a little bit less. It doesn't make a big difference, but still, the timer is on, basically, to get a deal quickly as possible. Okay, cap and discount. Let's go over this exercise. Okay, let's say you are investing in a company that is raising a Series A, right? So remember, you're an investor this time. You invest in a $50K note. So this is a convertible note with a $10 million cap and a 20% discount, right? How much equity will you get if the price round's pre-money valuation is 20 million? So let's start with 20 million. Can anyone walk me through this calculation?
Since it's worth 20 million, wouldn't it just double, so you would have 100K worth?
Let's start with this, right? So what is a cap? Right, so the price equity round is 20 million, right? And then you have a cap on the valuation you have to pay, right? As an investor. How does that apply? And what does the 20% discount mean? Can anyone break it down, the difference between a cap and a discount? It was on the quiz, was it not? Oh, did anyone get to quiz 2? Or did you guys just do quiz 1? Oh, okay. Okay, so the quiz was a little bit harder than I thought. Okay. So does anyone know the difference between a cap and a discount yet? Okay, so make sure to check the reading. I think it's like on chapter 4. But the easiest way to remember this, and this is midterm material, just FYI. So a cap, right, is the maximum valuation you have to pay. And then the discount is the discount from the priced round. So why do you get a cap why would an investor, right? If a company is in that next, so let's say, for example, Lai started a startup, right? Vince comes in year 2021. He comes in today, right? And then Vince says, yo, Lai, what's up, dude? I got this like crazy app startup. Like, can you put down like, 30 grand? And Lai's like, I don't know. And he's like, all right, fine. Like, I'll give it to you. But I want to be sure I'm mitigated the risk, right? And because I'm coming in as like I'm the first investor, like I'm the very first investor, how are you going to mitigate my risk, right? Because in finance, remember, if there's risk, there needs to be a reward, right? So if Vince convinced Lai to join, let's say, for example, on a convertible note, I mean, there could be caps and discounts on safes and kisses as well, just FYI. But we'll just make it as simple as possible, go old school a little bit for clarification. So Vince convinces Lai, right? And Lai puts in 30K, right? Vince convinced him to be the very, very first investor. Let's say 5 years later, Ahmad rolls up, and then he is like his rich uncle passed away, and now he runs like one of the biggest VC firms that has 100 million assets under management. Vince's startup does incredibly well. They're doing like 8 million in revenue and ARR, and Vince says like, my company is worth $30 million, right? And then I'm raising this money at a $30 million pre-money valuation, so pre-investment, right? Ahmad wants to put down $10 million. And then if we go off of that $30 million valuation, and then Lai only is putting $10,000 or $30,000 in the beginning, what percentage would Lai roughly own? Yeah, like 0.1%, right? Yeah, right? But Lai came in so freaking early, and then Ahmad came in 5 years later, and then Ahmad puts in, let's say, $10 million. Is it fair for Lai to own 0.1% when he was the very first investor?
No.
Why no?
Well, I mean, doesn't that obliterate a lot of the value that he was able to, or a lot of the value or percentage share that he held in the company for that time?
Right.
So the amount of money he would make in the long term drops, or maybe it would go up if you put 10 million in. I don't know.
Right. The value of his 30K in the beginning was what got Vince's company, right, to the valuation of $30 million, right? So he created value with his capital, and he's going to want to be compensated for that, as he should be, right? It's like getting into, for example, Tesla stock early, right? You're supposed to capture the upside. That's why you get in early. If there's no compensation for that, like, why would you go in early? You just wait until it's a proven concept, right? So in order to hedge against that, let's go back 5 years. Let's say that didn't happen. Lai was actually smart enough to be like, hey, buddy, I need a cap and a discount to hedge against risk, or to be compensated for my risk, right? Years in advance. So he applies a cap and a discount. And then he's smart enough to say something like, no matter what, even if you raise it a $50 million valuation or a $500 million valuation, no matter what, the maximum, right, valuation of that company has to be capped at $5 million. So his $30,000 investment is calculated at a $5 million pre-money valuation, meaning if Vince actually raises money at a $30 million valuation, his $30,000 valuation is based off of $5 million valuation, meaning instead of 0.1%, now he has something like 8% or something like that, if I'm doing my math correctly, which is or 4%. I'm not
Six.
6%, right? Which is significantly better, right, than 0.1, that earlier percentage, right? So that's the reason behind a cap and a discount. Now, sometimes it's cheaper to apply the discount than the cap. For example, if Vince had a $5 million cap and then Ahmad comes in and then he offers, right? And then Vince, or I'm sorry, I'm getting the names mixed up. Lai had a $5 million cap, right? And let's say he also had a 30% discount, right? On the price equity rounds valuation. So when Ahmad comes in, let's say with a $6 million valuation, right? Offer sheet to Vince, and Vince accepts it, and it's a 30% discount from that price equity rounds valuation of 6 million. What's a better deal for Lai? Is it the $5 million cap or a 30% discounted from 6 million? What's the 30% discount from 6? 4.2, right? 4.2 million. So the discount would give Lai a greater percentage than the cap. Does that make sense? So in this case, Lai would take the discount, right? He got rewarded for his risk. He's been incentivized, right, early on, because he was motivated to invest in Vince, knowing that he's going to capture some of the upside. He's going to get a better deal than Ahmad or like future VCs. So that's the reason why the discount and the cap is so important. Does that make sense for you guys?
How's the 4.2 better than the 5 million cap though?
So if you're buying shares of a company, right, for 30 grand, what gives you more shares? Buying it at a $5 million valuation or a 4.2 million? Remember, imagine Lai as someone buying shares, right? It's not good for Vince, but it's good for Lai. You're thinking about it from an investor. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you want the better terms if you're an investor or an entrepreneur. So if you're answering from the investor's perspective, in that scenario, the discount will be better because he's buying more shares for his 30 grand. Okay, so let's go back to this exercise. Okay, so you invest in a 50K note with a $10 million cap and a 20% discount. How much equity will you get if the price round's pre-money valuation is 20 million? So if the 20% discount is applied to 20 million, where does that land you?
16 million.
16 million, right? So what would give you more shares if you put 50K down? 10 million or 16 million?
Take that 16 to the bank, please.
No, you get more shares if you're an investor. You're an investor, 10 million, right? Yeah.
Right.
So 50K, your 50K investment in a 10 million valuation will give you 5%, right, of the company. But 16 million out of 50K would give you something like 3.3% and some change, right? Does that make sense? It's confusing, right? Or are you guys able to wrap your, it takes normally it takes a few weeks. Like you get it and then you forget it, you get it and then you forget it. But you just break it down. Like so a lot of my students, they don't get it and they start looking up all these how to calculate discount and cap on all these blogs and stuff. And it just messes them up so bad because they just do it in such a confusing way. The easiest way to remember is, okay, if you're an investor, what makes the enterprise value, right? The anchor price cheaper for you. That's all you have to think about. So look at the cap. The cap never changes. Just apply the discount to the price equity round, and then it'll give you that discount. You take the two, and then you just take the lower one. That's all it is. It's really, it's a lot simpler than you think. Same thing, if it's 12 million, this your question doesn't change because the 10 million cap still applies. Oh no, I'm sorry. So let's, oh yeah, Puya, go ahead.
So if you invest 50K on a 10 million cap, it shouldn't be 5%, it should be 0.5%, right?
0.5% and then 0.3% for the
Yeah,
reference.
thanks.
Yeah, you're correct. Sorry about that. So let's just try one more exercise. So let's say 10 million cap is still the same on that 50K note. 20% discount is applied to 12 million. What's the valuation you get applying the 20% discount?
To the 20 or the 12? I'm sorry, I missed that.
You're getting a 20%. So Lai's thinking about investing again to Vince's startup, right? So he still has that 10 million cap. He upped it, let's say, to 50K. And then he gets a 20% discount, right? As an investor. Think about Tesla. You're getting a 20% discount, or either maximum stock price based on the enterprise value is 10 million, right? Let's just imagine it that way. So if a 20% discount is applied to 12, where does that land you?
It gives you a 9.6 million, and so
Right.
you would take the discount because it's a lower valuation.
Right, exactly. So is 10 million is paying at a $10 million price tag better for Lai, or 9.6? Obviously it's 9.6, right? So that's all it is. So think about it from an investor's perspective. It'll be so much easier. Okay, so cap and discount, just remember this. Just always remember that, just follow the discount, and then you'll arrive at your answer. I've seen the most weirdest, like some students miss this still during finals. It takes them like 14 weeks and they still miss it. And it's such a simple concept, but it's like a tongue twister in your head or something like that. It's just very confusing. But if you follow the discount, then it's pretty simple. Okay. Let's just take a quick break. So can we reconvene at 10:39? Is that okay for you guys? Okay. Oh, Logan, great intermission music. Logan, are you playing the guitar? I don't think he's aware of that. Were you playing? Hey, Logan, were you playing the guitar?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Did y'all hear that?
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
You didn't put your mute button.
That
on.
was impressive.
Oops. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Who plays that song? Or did you just make that up?
That's a classical piece by I think his name was Villalobos, and I forget exactly what the name is, but I learned it like probably, I don't know, back in high school, something like that, for a concert.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great, great. Now you can play for us like every break. That'll be amazing.
If you wouldn't mind, I'll do it.
No, I'm
Don't tempt me with a good time.
That was awesome. Great. So let's talk about some venture deal concepts, right? So, let's talk about this. Like, why do you guys think VCs care so much about control?
Because they want to make money.
They want to make money. Yep. Yep. It's think about like sometimes when you're a parent, right? You provide the allowance, but you got to play by the rules, right? Go to bed by 9. You can't have sugar after 6. No TV more than 3 hours, whatever it is. It's the same thing, right? If you're at the mercy of VCs, you have to abide by those terms. A big discussion, whether you are you fundraising for a VC or a PE firm, or let's say even your own lifestyle business, a big discussion will always circle around board seats. right? Because the board seat has the power to make a lot of executive decision, and their job is to be the boss of the CEO. So it's very, very important to negotiate that. Normally, in a Series A round, a lead investor, right? So going back to that example where Ahmad is about to invest in Lai, if he's putting down $10 million on a $30 million valuation, and he's putting in, yeah, all 10 million of it, or let's say if he's even putting in half of what Lai wants, let's say Lai is trying to raise $10 million at a $30 million valuation, and Ahmad's raising or putting down 5 million or more, he's going to ask for a board seat. Because if Lai screws up, he's going to want to bring in a new CEO, such as Logan. Logan's a great guitar player. Lai, you know, I don't think he has the soft skills and the charm like Logan. He's the one to take the company to the next level. Now, it isn't uncommon for really, really big VC firms. Remember that concept with corporate venture capital, as well as you know, VCs and all these companies having EIRs. Yes, they're the ones that are capable of replacing a first-time entrepreneur as Lai. So you go to the Sequoias, at Andreessen's and stuff like that. They care more and more about control, because if they put in a majority investment, they already have 10 other entrepreneurs that sold their companies from previous funds to be like, Lai sucks, let's just put in Logan, right? Or you know, like Ahmad, maybe he might be like a VC that exited before. He's like, man, if Lai sucks, I'm just gonna go in myself. So as long as they have control, if a manager is very, very poor, it is not uncommon. Do you guys know the statistics on what percentage of founding CEOs get removed? Anyone want to take a guess?
More than
Persia, what's that?
definitely more than half.
Definitely more than half. Yes. 60, it's like something like 60%. So if you're like, the problem is a lot of entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, they see being removed as a founder as a failure. So I got pretty much fired from my own company too. But it wasn't like, oh wait, Kevin stopped showing up to work on Friday, we had to let him go. It's like founders get removed for various reasons. In my case, I had a difference in vision. But it is not uncommon for a startup to outgrow you know, the CEO. It's not uncommon. So it's funny because like when I actually give career advice, I always try to, you know, I always ask the question, if you could grow faster than the company, leave. But if the company is growing faster than you, stay. It's really as simple as that, right? So if the company is outgrowing you, then you're going to have all these opportunities, right, that you can pick from. If it's not, then it's quite the opposite. You have to look for new opportunities. So when this occurs, yeah, VCs definitely want control. Same thing with PE firms, right? You know, for example, if you come in as let's say Persia, right, is like now in her 40s, the year is 2040 or something like that. She's like a hotshot vice president at a you know, Fortune 100 company, right? And let's say hypothetically, Luke has his own PE firm, and he is actually buy out Lai's company. So Lai's company actually did really, really well, it turns out. Now that $500 million, and then like, you know, Persia is like this hot shot, and then Luke says like, hey, Persia, Lai, you know, he just wants to cash out now. He's tired. He's been in the game for 20 something odd years. He's really, really happy. He still owns 50% of the equity. He can walk away with $250 million. He's calling it a day, and he's going to live on an island. And we need a new executive. And we think you're a rising star, Persia. Why don't you join our company? We know you're getting paid, let's say, you know, $1 million a year at Apple. We'll double that, $2 million a year. Here's a CEO role, and we're going to give you 5%. So a hired gun CEO is normally about 5%. That's the market price, just FYI. So you get 5% of the company, you come in, right? But you are, Persia, an unproven CEO, right? So being good at a corporate role and being a corporate soldier is very different, you know, being an entrepreneur. But the company is trying to be like that next Apple, right? That next Fortune 500 company. So they'll start recruiting once you get that vice president title, or maybe even director. PE firms will start reaching out to you to run companies and buy out. Lai's like, huh? Really? So this isn't a dead end job. I could do that. Yeah, that happens, Lai. Just if you're good at what you do, that will happen. So Persia comes in, and Luke though is really, is unsure, right? So Luke is like, well, if Persia really screws up, I'm gonna make sure that I have an option to fire her, and I want to have control, right? And certain provisions to prevent that, right? So it is not uncommon to have certain clauses for these CEOs to get ousted, and they will intentionally not give you a board seat. So Persia, your goal is to negotiate a board seat so you get a seat on the table, right? So there's certain clauses that you're gonna want to highlight. Maybe, for example, like something like a compensation if you get ousted. Like maybe there's like a $10 million bonus that you're supposed to get if you get ousted. So it discourages Luke from firing you. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of seesawing. Maybe you can get them under a 5-year contract. Maybe you get more stock options, stuff like that. Maybe there's no, for example, vesting period. So we're going to talk about vesting in a little bit. But if Persia, for example, gets 5% of the company, she does not get 5% immediately. That's the whole idea of vesting. Maybe she gets 20% when she first joins the company, and over the next 5 years she gets a prorated percentage. So if Persia sucks on the 13th month, Luke is hedged, but Persia still keeps like 1.25% of that ownership. So there's certain things like vesting, cliff, that's negotiated for these terms. But at the end of the day, if you're the one that holds the gold holds the power, you guys know that, right? Clause or that statement. So VCs and PEs will always try to gain as much power as possible. You as an entrepreneur, like, what do you need to do to hedge against that? What's the best way to hedge against a VC or PE firm, or like in Persia's case, an executive, right? That has like this package to quit her amazing job at Apple and join Lai's startup as the next succeeding CEO. Like, how do you hedge against that? Get a great lawyer? It's really simple. You want as many offers as possible, right? There's nothing more powerful than the walk away card. Nothing more powerful. If Persia had 3 offers, it's a done deal. If when Lai's raising money from Ahmad and then he has like 7 other VC firms, be like, no, give me better terms. I'll just go to the other guy. So competition always creates demand or increase, or like, yeah, I guess like the imbalance of supply and demand, right, allows you to have a lot of negotiation leverage. So my sales and marketing strategy or my PE firm is all about logistics. Like Napoleon has an amazing quote that I really admire. Did I tell you guys about the Napoleon quote? No? Okay. So amateurs talk strategies, professionals talk logistics. Sorry. So amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. So it's all about the pipeline and how many leads and opportunities you generate. Because as soon as you can say like, nah, let's end this meeting. Like, there's nothing more powerful than that. You guys saw it, right, from yesterday's video, kind of, in a way. So he's like willing to walk away or, throw insults. Very similar concept. Okay, should you worry if a VC cares so much about unimportant terms? Why is that, Lai? You're nodding your head.
One, they probably don't have the experience that they think they do. And 2, like red flags, they maybe have a hidden agenda.
Yeah, you read the book. Yeah. So a lot of VCs will, what, like, when I know someone's a dumb investor is when they ask the question like, Oh, what if Apple steals your idea? What if Google steals your idea? Like that's like the dumbest. It's like the dumbest smart question. It's the question that VCs ask when they're kind of new in the game, the way I see it, to think that they're smart. Or like, what's your exit strategy? You know the exit strategy is like only like 2 or 3 ways, like strategic buyer, IPO, or selling to a PE firm. Like, what else is there? Like, what can anyone just think of another exit strategy? I mean, there's really no other, and then maybe you just list the companies, right? I mean, there's really no other exit strategy. Um, and when they ask such basic questions, like it's an immediate red flag. One investor was very annoyed with the lawyer that I had. I'm like, dude, why is that even a big deal? So, oh, I had bad experiences with this lawyer. Or like another investor was worried that I might buy a company too quickly. I'm like, dude, like I'm supposed to take 2 years to buy a company. If I buy it in 2 months, he's like, well, what are you going to do if you're going to buy a company before the paperwork is done? I'm like, how is this even a discussion? Like it's basically asking like what if you end up getting into terms with the seller before I wire the money into your bank? Like, why are you freaking wasting my time with this question? Like, can you not ask Harvard MBA and everything? They're like a VC firm as well. I'm like, dude, you guys are so dumb. And I was so annoyed with that question. The meeting just went sour from there. I can't stand stupidity. It's just so stupid. So if a VC is like arguing or a seller's asking about really basic stuff, like be very skeptical. A lot of these people, they're a lot of them are a lot more bark than they are bite. If you really break it down, so it's a warning sign. Stock option pool. Why is this important? Like, what are stock option pools used for?
Incentivizing employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So this is sometimes a discussion whether the stock option pool dilution happens pre-money or post-money. Why is that important for you as an entrepreneur to get the stock option pool diluted post-money, or stock option pool applied post-money valuation? So during the pre-money phase, right? Let's take a step back. How is a stock option pool applied? Let's say there's a 10% stock option pool. Assume just the cap table is 100% full, right? Obviously. So there's a 10% stock option pool. How does that apply to that cap table? Or let's break it down even more simpler. Let's say there's 10 investors, right? Everyone has $1 million. The company's worth $10 million. And then all of a sudden, Logan gets 10 of his buddies, right, to become his employees. And then this dilutes the stock option pool by 10% because everyone got 1%. What happens to each investor's 10%?
Should be diluted between all of them. Yeah.
But yes, Priya, but by what percent?
So everyone else should have, I believe, 90% in total, and 10% the stock options. So each would have 9%.
Yes, all the 10 investors will be diluted to 9%, because Logan got a bunch of his buddies at 1%. I mean, technically, it's a little bit different if you calculate, but just simple terms, more or less 9%, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, right, do you want the dilution to happen to you pre or post money? What happens during post money valuation?
Post,
VCs
because it's
invest.
after everything's accounted for.
Yes, Persia. Yes. So do you want the stock option pool, Persia? I'm going to hang with you for a second. So for the stock option pool, do you want that to be applied with the investor or without the investor? The dilution part.
With the investor, because then there's
Yes.
more money to it.
Yeah, because you want to take him down with you, basically, right? You want his shares to be diluted, not just your own. So this is actually it's a bigger discussion point where the stock option pool is going to be diluted. So for my stock option pool, it's diluted post acquisition. which is great, right? It's not diluted pre. But as you're raising money, investors will try to be very, very clear about it. If you're not paying attention, it's going to be hidden on your term sheet without knowing. So be very, very careful of that, because investors, they do not want to get that. Like, for example, right, if Ahmad invested in Lai's company 30%, and then like all of a sudden Lai's like, all right, I'm gonna get like 10, all these executives now with the new money that we raised, we're gonna get a COO, we're gonna get CMO, we're gonna get CTO, and all of a sudden Lai Ahmad, right, 3 months in, he's already at 27%, right, because he's diluted from 30% or whatever that amount is, right? So this is a pretty important discussion point. What is a phantom stock option pool? Anyone want to take a guess? Okay, so because of the impact that stock options can have in regards to the cap table and people getting diluted, and a lot of investors, they don't like that, and the back and forth discussing whether it's pre or post money, people decided to just give out bonuses as if at the end of the year, as if the employees held stocks. So you're just getting it in cash, whatever gains that were made on the revenue or the EBITDA as a prorated amount from that pool. So it's like fake stock options to keep the cap table clean, and the employees feel great because you get instant liquidity. But in the case of an exit, you don't have to deal with, let's say like maybe 10 other, employees that hold maybe like 15% of your company, because you incentivize them. They all got liquidated or paid out via bonuses. This structure can vary. It could be like a yearly bonus, or it could be, the cash could be distributed in an equal amount during a liquidity event. So it's actually pretty common. It's more common in private equity because, in private equity, there's more cash basically, because you're already buying a profitable business. You're not investing in technology and having, negative EBITDA for like 10 years until you exit. So it is pretty, it's a lot more common in private equity than it is in startup land. Information rights, what is it and why is it important? Yes, Lai.
It's the information that the VCs have access to, and the type of information. And I think there's like a time frame you have to provide them.
What would be a good example of information rights? Ahmad, if
Like-
you're investing in Lai's company, what do you want to see?
What? Say that again.
If you're investing in Lai's company, right? What would you want to see? To make sure that like is, let's say 10 million in revenue is really 10 million.
For example, I want to see like some like assets or something to prove it.
Right? Maybe you want to look at the tech stack. What about like contracts with customers?
Yeah.
Right? Invoices, receipts, right?
Yeah, of
Tech
course.
stack, right? Demo. You probably want to see that, right?
Yeah.
So information rights is rights that you are going to have, you're going to suggest from the entrepreneur, like, hey, I want to see like these, at least like 20 different things. Tax reports, right? That's a big one, right? So you want to see those financials before you invest, and you want to make it really, really clear. On the entrepreneur's side, like, I mean, there's really, if you've done your job, there's really nothing to hide, right? For me, like in the PE world, when I'm doing due diligence, and if there's like missing financials, like nothing irritates me more, because I feel like they're hiding something, or missing, line items, or just funny business. I love it when an entrepreneur says like, hey, by the way, I'm sending you financials. These are the things that might seem weird during these years. I just want to be transparent with you. I don't want to waste your time, but you're going to see some funny things, and this is the reason why. Like, I can't respect an entrepreneur like that is more honest than that. So it's like, I remember like this deal that we're looking at, it's actually a pretty big company, and yeah, he told me straight out, like the first meeting, I'm sending you financials, but I didn't pay back my some of my loans. back in 4 years ago or something like that, and you're going to see some funny business in the year like 2019, because I either had to pay back my loans or just not pay them at that time so that we could still grow the company. And then it turns out it was the right bet because that was our growth year. And I really appreciate the fact that he was just straight up honest with me. And there's other, sellers that are kind of whimsy. And I see the same thing with like startup entrepreneurs. I hate it when they're sneaky, because it gives you a window to what kind of CEO they are at the company, how they might potentially treat their employees, how they might treat other investors, how they might treat their customers. So it's like that's how if they're sneaky with an investor, can you imagine how they would treat like an intern or like an employee, right? Or a customer that doesn't generate a lot of revenue, right? So it's like we're probably at the high end, right? And if you're sneaky with us, like it's not a good sign, right? That's how I see it. So you don't want to be sneaky with information, right? It's like if you have everything prepared, unless you have some kind of crazy technology that you want to hide, then yeah, if that's the case, just be honest with the VCs and they'll probably understand certain parts. But for the most part, it's good to be transparent and have all the paperwork ready. Explain transfer of rights, lockup provision. Are you guys familiar with transfer of rights? Lockup provision. This is more of the stockholder rights. Yeah, so transfer of rights, like it's just basically saying that like, when you're transferring stock, so let's say Vince invested in Lai's company, and then he's like, well, I want to give, Logan a gift of 100 shares of Vince's company as a gift, right? Like you have to disclose to the company that you're transferring shares, right? The next shareholder meeting, let's say, Logan just shows up, like I have Vince's shares. It's kind of a awkward place to be, right? So, it just means some of the things that you got to be clear about. Lockup provision is basically if you do take a company public, you can't sell the shares like immediately. Normally, there's like a 6-month period, 3-month period, or what have you, that you can't sell your shares during that time. Right of first refusal. This is very, very important. This is very prevalent in private equity as well as the VC world. And it's probably it's probably prevalent if you're not even raising VC or PE money. If you're just raising from an investor, that's very, very savvy. Just as a one-off, you might think, but they probably would still want a right of first refusal. Can anyone explain what that is? Yes, Lai. Killing it.
It's when the investors have the right to buy new shares from the company. Like if any new shares are available, they have the right to buy it first.
Yes. And up to what amount normally?
Is it how much they put in, or it's in the contract?
What's the what's the standard? Do you remember from the reading? Their pro rata amount from that cap table. What does that mean? Pro rata amount from the cap table from the previous round. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick with Lai, right? So let's say Puya, right, has invested 10%, right, of Lai's company that Ahmad as a VC invested, right? And then 5 years later, right, when Luke comes in and is trying to retire, because Lai's trying to, or 20 years later, right, we were at 20 years, and then Persia's coming in as a CEO, right? Puya wants to invest again and be part of the upside again. But now the valuation is $500 million, not 30%, right? So, and then if Puya had a term called right of first refusal, he has the right to invest all the way up to his pro rata to maintain that 10%. If there's a $50 million valuation, he could invest close to 10 million, up to $50 million to still get even on that 10%. amount from that previous cap table. Does that make sense? Because Puya normally wants to create, like Puya, he wants to stay at 10% no matter what. That's his goal with that pro rata clause. So whether it's like, the next valuation is at $1 billion, 5 billion, whatever, he could get himself up to 10%. That's the norm, right? Now, if Lai's company outgrows significantly, then it gets very challenging for Puya to match that amount, because he's just going to run out of money. So naturally, there's going to be money normally as you go to the normal additional rounds for other investors to invest in. But Puya, if it's not like make or break, if he doesn't match the 10%, it's not like all or nothing. He can still try to get to 6, 7, 8% or whatever he's comfortable with. And that's the right of first refusal. He has the right to refuse to participate up to 10% if he wanted to. So he could be like, well, I don't have 50 million, I'll just put in 30. So maybe he's at like 7% instead of 10. And then that remaining, 20 million gets to gives other investors who didn't invest when Ahmad's company invested in Lai's 30 years ago to participate in this new round of funding. So what is super pro rata, right? Yes, Lai.
I think that's in the clause, the amount that they're up to, like it's a multiple amount. So for example, it's ×2, then it's twice the percentage you're able to.
Yes. Yeah. So going back to Puya's example, he could have put in like a super pro rata clause where it's like, all right, next round of funding, I want a special privilege to up to 20%. So Puya put down $100 million. It's like, I'm going big or go home. He puts down $20 million because he's maximizing his super pro rata. So this is a common strategy actually with like really, really good VC firms to increase their percentage if a company is doing really, really well. So if you have plenty of dry powder, remember we talked about dry powder yesterday? If you have plenty of dry powder, you really like the entrepreneur, you really like the idea, you can put in a super pro rata and you're squeezing out essentially other investors over time. You're getting more and more and more and more control, right? So some investors don't like certain investors that have sometimes a little bit more heft and weight, because they'll talk about certain experiences where certain companies exercise that super pro rata because the entrepreneur let those investors have that special clause, and then they squeezed out some of the smaller investors, and they didn't make as much as they thought they wanted to because they didn't have the same super pro rata clause. So it gets very, very interesting. If you're very, very clever, you can get investors to fight for you or fight against one another to fight for your attention. That's what you want to be. You don't want to fight against other entrepreneurs to get the investors. You want the investors to fight against each other to fight to be part of your startup journey. And if you're really smart, like your professor, you can do that to a certain extent. I'm not saying which one, but yeah, some dude in Chapman. Okay, I'm just kidding. All right, so voting rights. How is this handled for preferred shares in a VC deal? I mentioned earlier, so preferred shares could have voting rights. Explain co-sale agreement and why is it important? What's a co-sale agreement? Lai?
It states that when the founder sells share, the investor will have the opportunity to sell a proportional amount of their stock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for example, Lai's about to call it a day. And then if Lai calls it a day and exits, he can't just sell his own shares, or he can, but the shareholders will be notified. And then who was the early investor? Ahmad. It gives Ahmad an opportunity to sell as well, right? So, like, no, it wasn't Ahmad. Yeah, it was Ahmad. Yeah, Ahmad like really believes in Lai, and Ahmad thinks like, this lady Persia, I don't think so. I'm gonna exit too. Right? That could be the case, right? So same thing, right? So if Persia joins, right? And then for example, she's the new CEO and Luke really believes in Persia because Luke's PE firm recruited her. He's gonna want a co-sale agreement. If Persia's out, I'm out. Like he will want to hedge against that. It's almost a hedge against key man risk as well. So that's one of the things that could be implemented. And no shop agreement. This is very important because it's prevalent everywhere. What's a no shop agreement? Yes, finally someone new. Logan.
It's an agreement between a seller and a buyer, and it essentially stops the seller from receiving offers from elsewhere.
Yep. PE firm, VC firm, even certain big contracts in business development. If you're doing like a big deal with Walmart or Target or Apple, you literally get, they call it term sheet. Like this is a 5-year contract. We're doing a co-partnership. Like you can't float this around with our competitors like Samsung or Intel or any of these companies. It's a very common thing to have a no shop clause because people don't like it, right? This is where the person who offered the no shop clause actually has an opportunity to do due diligence and shave down the price. So it actually has a lot of leverage too, where the seller doesn't have leverage because now you can't. Your biggest defense mechanism is having a lot of opportunities, but you're inhibited from doing that. So the power dynamics, this is the one time the seller is not as strong, or the startup is not as strong, because you can't shop for other VCs, you can't shop for other PE firms. So it's very important to understand that. Now, if you're a good seller or a good startup person, what is the one thing you would probably want to negotiate on a no shop agreement?
Sorry, could you ask that one more time?
What would be in a no shop agreement? What would be the one thing that you would probably want to negotiate if you're a really savvy entrepreneur or a business owner that is selling their business?
I would imagine a good price for starters.
That's not the no shop agreement though. Just specifically on the no shop agreement term. You want to negotiate time. It's like, all right, fine, I'll give you no shop agreement, but 2 weeks, I want a term sheet. Right? So depending on how good of an entrepreneur or a seller you are, this is where the battle should be fought. This is where you fight. Always know when to pick your battles. Like for example, when I was doing business development, I would make all these weird, like let's say it's a 50-page agreement. I would make all these weird asks in the first like 10 pages. So by the time like when the important stuff is on like page 45, everyone's so tired. I just like, I constantly like tire them out, argue about all this stuff. And it's like page 45, all right. I mean, I have so many tricks. It's really funny. And you wouldn't expect that, right? But that's how you win. It's really psychological at this point in the game. Really, it's like a job interview. It's psychological, right? And it's funny because like you have to teach your co-founders all these tips and tricks when you're negotiating together. And sometimes, like if you have a bad co-founder, they won't get the hint, and then they'll like screw up your plans, and then I don't know. You have to do that. You have to synchronize really well, and that's where it gets really fun. But yeah, so the no shop agreement, you want to be able to be in a position where you can exercise at least the window of time. It's always going to be, you can't avoid a no shop agreement. It's not something you can avoid, but you can negotiate the time. And if you're good, you could get it in a much favorable way. Okay, so we're almost done here. Let me just check how far we are. Oh no, we got okay. Okay, we got this, we got that. Okay. So let's talk about I think we covered a lot of this throughout our conversations, but let's just make sure we fully understand it. So what are how VCs value companies? Well, normally the stage of the company is important. How much they raise, how much they've been around, do they have a product demo, do they have their first contract? It's normally a black box. So again, it's very, very psychological at that stage. They care a lot about the experience of the founder. Very biased. I hated this coming out of UC Riverside as an undergrad. At the time, everyone got to UC Riverside. It was like a 75% acceptance rate, or no, I think it was 80%. And it really sucked because no one took me seriously when I was in Silicon Valley, because you have all these kids from like the Caltechs, the Stanfords, the MITs, and they would keep saying that, oh, you don't have experience, you don't have experience, you don't have experience. And now looking back, now that I'm 36, I'm looking back and then I see, some of these munchkins starting their own startup, and I get it, like the way they talk to you or talk to me, how they even just write investor updates, like the inexperience like really shows in the form of like overcompensating or being overly aggressive or taking feedback too personally. And I totally understand, like I'm very different from when I was in my 20s. One example is like, I swear I'm like the best micromanager ever, because most people don't know that they're being micromanaged. But in my 20s, everyone was afraid of me because I was like I was like so demanding. I'm still really demanding, but back in the day, now I know how to use a carrot and a stick, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And back in the day, it was just a stick and a stick. It was negative reinforcement on negative reinforcement. So like my co-founders, even my bosses, like I would get a job and then I would ask my boss to send me a daily report on what he did. I was like, dude, I expect excellence from you. I don't care if you're my boss. Like, I want a daily report on what you did. So I was like so demanding, and people thought I was very absurd. I almost do all the same things, reports, analytics, and all that stuff. But the environment is like so much more positive because I know how to even out that balance. So like I was asking one of my CFOs like yesterday, I'm like, dude, like I'm a great micromanager, right? She's like, dude, you are not a micromanager at all. I'm like, dude, all the things that you guys are doing, reporting and like not allowed to send DMs on Slack, dude, that's micromanaging. She's like, no, like this is a great company. I'm like, okay. So it's like I got just really good at being able to ask for excellence, but not being able to and also portray it in a way where people are having a lot of fun at my company. And it took me about, yeah, pretty much like 7 or 8 years to really understand that. And then in the beginning, I went through a phase where I would pretend not to, I was like lying to people, like I'm not working, I'm like partying this weekend, but all I'm doing is working because I didn't want people to feel overwhelmed. And then like I was living in a van with 5 other people. I would like wake up at 1 a.m., work for 2 hours and go back to sleep, like hoping that I don't get caught. Because like I remember one of my associates was like, dude, like sometimes you're it's so inspiring how hard you work, but sometimes it's so discouraging knowing how much of a gap between your work ethic is there between ours. So it's actually really discouraging that you work so hard. So that's what I was like, dude, I've been secretively, I'm aware of that. I've been secretively waking up middle of the night, and his jaw just dropped. It's like, really? Because I felt just as bad because I'm trying to make you guys feel comfortable. And then, and then when I was living in a van, I was like, I was asking the operations department, like, where's your sleeping bag? You should show support and sleep in the office. And like, it's like, I'm like so delusional, like I expect that. But then after a while, you understand like, okay, that's not human behavior. People aren't going to be that crazy. And to find people that are is very helpful, but you have to be realistic. And that only happens with experience. When you're younger, it's really hard to understand that balance because you kind of assume like, well, I like work-life balance. I'm just going to assume everyone likes that, or all my friends are like that, or all my coworkers are like that. But then you get older, you just kind of expand your horizon a lot more. The other thing is like perception. So name brands really help. Like, you know, you got a Google, you know, you got a master's degree, could help, PhD in a specialized field, all that stuff. Oftentimes it's just supply and demand and market conditions. Sometimes the VC space is really hot. There's not a lot of startups to invest in. Sometimes there's a lot of money, right? Sometimes recently an IPO happened in that particular fintech space that you're in, and then all the valuations just shoot up. Everyone thinks it's the hottest thing for a moment. Also, accelerators and incubators normally have like a pegged valuation. So then if that becomes kind of prevalent in the VC space, everyone just starts with that same like 3 million valuation or 5 million valuation, same discount, same cap, or, you know, very similar KISS or very similar SAFE. So that could also set the tone, especially, you know, companies that have very little revenue or pre-revenue stage. Competition can also change the valuation. And one thing I do want to caution is that some VCs, as well as PE firms or investors, they only care about like the price, whether your startup is cheaper than all the other startups. And I think that's really stupid, because if you're trying to go for $100 million exit and a investor is just arguing whether you're getting it at 7 million valuation or $8 million valuation, I just think they're like really dumb for me, because the biggest opportunity is not cutting costs. Like paying one time at the very beginning, you're going to save costs just once. But compound return, right? Einstein said there's nothing more powerful in the universe than compound return. If you're able to get into a fast growth mode for your startup or buying a company that's growing very, very quickly, that return is happening annually, right? So to save 1 million and neglect a potential outcome, a difference between $100 million exit and $200 million exit based on the growth rate, I think it's just sheer stupidity of an investor. Now that's more of my philosophy, but some investors might argue. So, you know, be very careful of like bargain hunters in the market. So a lot of sellers in the PE space, they just call them bargain hunters. They're just looking for cheap deals, especially with COVID, right? And, you know, you buy something cheap, you might end up with something cheap. You want to buy a good company at a great price, right? Not a average company at a great price. So you want at least a really good company. That should be your priority. So if there's a VC or a PE firm or an investor that focuses too much on that, have your guard up and be very skeptical in those instances. Don't believe everything your MBA professor told you about DCF models. So we talked about DCF models, right? It's not really accurate, especially like smaller companies, because of the expansion multiple. And then, yeah, current economic climate, right? Something like COVID, you know, or the Great Recession can fluctuate this quite a bit. We talked about some of this, but we'll skip a couple of other terms because it's already 11:25 today. And we could, you know, make sure to read chapter, I think 5 and 6. We're going to talk about more terms during the next class. I'll stick around for more questions, but if you haven't had a chance to watch some of the videos, make sure you catch up, and then I'll post the homework later today, and then you guys are all set to go. Great. Well, congrats. We completed lecture 6, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the long weekend.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy the
Thank you.
weekend.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.